Hi, so today I'm going to show you how to make a fairly decent passable line graph in Microsoft Excel starting with the CSV comma separated values file. Basically, my advice is always, if you're in economics, to use higher level software. I work with R, but I'm going to another time maybe show you Gretel software, some other software that makes really nice graphs more easily. But if you're going to be working with Excel, the thing to avoid is basically avoiding the defaults. One, it looks pretty simple, but two, everyone can tell you just use default Excel settings. So I'm going to start opening a CSV file, make a graph, change it around a little bit, and then you make sure you never save it as CSV. You have to save it as an XLS, or else you'll lose everything you did. So that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to take my oil price data, create a variable, make a graph, and make it look a little better. So I'm going to start by opening the file. Always, and again, I'm assuming that most people have some knowledge of how to open files, but if you don't, I'll make sure that you can look here. Notice here, I'm looking for a CSV file, so I'm going to change this to all files, and I've got my lab data here. It didn't show up in the list because it is CSV, and it said Excel. So CSV, remember, is not Excel. You can open it in Excel. It's actually a text file. It's separated by commas, and so it's comma separated values, but it can be opened up in Notepad or Word or anything you want, and a lot of software opens CSV better than XLS. That's kind of why I work with it, because I kind of move on from Excel pretty quickly. So here's the data. This is my CPI, Consumer Price Index, and then I've also got the price of oil, which is the West Texas Intermediate. Real quick, I'm going to make a variable that looks like this. Actually, let me show you something. I, generally speaking, remove these parentheses because, again, if you're going to be working with other software, sometimes it just can't be read. So I kind of know what could go wrong, and I'm saying the parentheses could mess software up. Now, in Excel, I'm going to take this. I'm going to take the nominal oil price. I'm going to say 100 times C2 divided by B2, and that gives me the real oil price for all these years. Notice the observations are 1, 2, 3, all in 1980. This is monthly data. I always do suggest going to the bottom of your data series to make sure that you have it ended right. This goes to June 2017, and so that is my oil price data. Make sure there's no problems with any missing data. I always do really recommend looking at it before you do much, because you could have a blank cell that messes you up. Just kind of glance at your data before you begin. So I've got these two. I'm going to plot nominal and real oil prices over time. So this is going to be a time series graph. Everything is going to be a monthly observation. Now, I'm so old, I use key commands. You can do insert chart. I do INH. And of all the options here, you can take a line graph, and I go to the basic line graph. Now, different Excel will have different options, but I stick with kind of the basic line graph. This is what it looks like as the default Excel. All right, the version on my computer right here gives me this nice graph here that's got a couple problems. One, it has the lines across here. Usually I take these out, these horizontal lines. Then it's got the red and the blue, right? So if you know the economics behind it, the nominal value is higher than the real value because of inflation, and the gap is actually inflation. You could find your base year. The base year is somewhere. There's actually a number of points where it crosses 100. Probably somewhere around 2012, 2010. So here we go. Here's the gap, which is inflation. So this is showing the divergence between nominal and real oil prices. Now, you see graphs like this put in places. The problems that I'm going to point out is, one, the color. Assume that people don't have color, because printers can be black and white, or you have to pay for color, and nobody's going to pay for a blue line and a red line. That also means when you're writing about them or talking about them, don't refer to the color. So I'm going to make this, first of all, I'm going to turn it black. So I kind of click on it. I make sure every point is clicked as opposed to just one point, and I format data series, and I go to line color, solid line, and I do theme is black. All right, here I have my black line. Now, if I click here, all right, I can redo it, but I'm just going to show you how to do it again. If you can sometimes copy, just hit, repeat. But I'm going to format this data series, and I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to also make it solid line black, but I'm also going to change the style to be a dash. So I'm going to take the dash type from a solid line to this nice dash. Now, what else can I do? I can make it thicker, right? This is measured in points. I'm going to show you what this looks like first. This is fairly decent, but let's say that I want to make this one thinner, so I go to Format Data Series and I look at the style. I'm going to make it 1 point, which is a thinner line, and it looks like that. All right, and I could do the same thing here, and if I just hit Control Y, that will be this is thinner. But I think it's a little bit too thin, so I'm going to hit Control Z, and I'm going to format this. I'm going to make it slightly thinner. All right, and I'm going to make it 1.75. All right, it's kind of like fonts with type. You do 12-point font in Word. You can do different point sizes, right? 10-point is smaller than 12-point, etc. So you can make it look like that. Makes it look like you did. Made it look a little bit nicer. You can also, if you want, you can I right-clicked here. You format the axis, and you can do. You can actually change the numbers in here. Sometimes you want to do it if you have negative numbers. Sometimes the line will go through part way and you want to change it. I'm going to change, actually let me do this first. You can change, here, you can change the font. That's what I was looking for. And you could change the font color and size. And so you could actually make this a little bit bigger if you want, and so forth. And you can also change it from, I believe this is default, which is Calibri font. If you want your own to make it look like you made it yourself, you can also change it there in terms of the font, right? So it's all about changing it in here. So you've got all these options, and sometimes you can change the axis itself, which is what numbers go here, but you can also change the text that goes in here. Now, this is the other problem I kind of wanted to talk about down here. This is just random. This is just random months put in here. You see this a lot in Excel generated graphs. This is from 2011 to 2013 to 2016. Now, I haven't found a good way around this. Maybe someone knows more, but this is kind of my cheat or my trick. All right, so I'm going to go here, and the reason I do it over here is because this is going to actually fill out these columns when I split. I'm going to split this column up, and it's going to make 3 columns. If you do it over here, it's going to erase over whatever is, if it's not blank, it's going to erase. So if you look here, I'm going to make it so that 1980 is its own column, right? All the years, and there'll be 12 of them each year, and it's going to be a column for the month, a column for the year. And so this is a really good trick to know. For anything, you go to Data, and you go to Text to Columns. All right, and you see delimited. Remember, delimiting is a separator. So I'm going to go next, and I say of all the options, right? We talk about comma delimited and other spaces you'll see, but I'm going to make it the slash that separates my dates, right? So now I'm going to hit finish, and I've got this column of all the dates. Right? Now I'm going to replace this with all the 1980, 1981, and so forth. Now, how do you do that? If you click here in the main body, you go to Format Plot Area, and actually, no, you go to Select Data, excuse me. You select Data, and you go, and you can see these are the variables we graphed. And this is the horizontal axis labels. And now I'm going to go here. Now, if I wanted to, I could go from column A, and I could change it to E, or I could reselect it, right? So I could go over, but this is a little bit easier. I'm going to change these A's to E's, and it is going to have this here. Now, changing it further, right? This is going to be the column I made. I'm going to change it one more time just to show you, right? I'm going to change it to G, right? So column G is all the 1980s in it. So I'm going to change it to the one that has all the years I want. All right? And now I've got this graph that is only the years and not the the dashes, doesn't have the slashes and so forth. But it's still kind of weird because it's like every 2 years is sort of listed. So I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to format the axis. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify the interval unit, and I'm going to make it 5 years, which is 60 months. So I'm going to change this to 60. All right, and when I close it here, now it is in 5-year intervals across. All right, and I can also, if I want, right, I can change this in here. I can format the axis. I can make the sizes different, and what I want to do here is I can go here to font. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger, and I'm going to change it to 12-point font just to kind of match. All right? And so now I've got my labeled lines that are clearly distinguishable from one another in black and white. So I made a column of just the years, split off the other variables from it. So I just basically recopied column A into E, and then I split it off into G, and then I changed this axis to be this column, and so it looks a little bit nicer. And then I showed a little bit about how to change the fonts, change the sizes. You can also change the font that's being used, change the thickness and dashing of the line, and I can have a fairly nice graph that's a little bit better than what comes from default settings. Right now, if I click save, remember this was a CSV, this will save it as text. This is not text. This picture will no longer exist when you open it back up. So I want to save as. All right, and I change this, and remember we're in Excel, I can change it to a workbook, and I can save from there. Right? So then when I open it back up, I've got my graph, and I can copy this, put it in my paper, my project, and work from there. So and that's kind of the point. Open up a CSV, make a new variable, plot the variables, and then change what they have. All right. So I can also show you next how to do it in different software to make it a little bit better, but I'll show you that in a different video.